So we're doing top of funnel activities and then we're sending leads over. The sales team takes them. And then what we find a lot, we hear this all the time, is leads aren't closing. And what's interesting is that it was never a lead problem. It was more of a, seller problem. Now, I don't mean to put blame on it, but companies come to us saying, hey, my sellers are saying we don't have enough leads. We don't have better leads. We don't have good leads. And they're the ones complaining about the leads. So they come to us to fix the lead problem. We fix the lead problem, but it doesn't fix the revenue problem. It's still not closing. So what is it?
Traffic is cheap, but conversion is not. Too many CMOs are watching brilliant creative go to waste at the top of the funnel because what's passing through as qualified just isn't. So how can you identify where the real bottleneck is, and why is rethinking how MQLs are defined and scored the single most strategic fix a CMO can make? Welcome to this episode of the B2B Marketers on a Mission podcast, and I'm your host, Christian Klepp. Today, I'll be talking to Gabe Lullo, who will be answering these questions. He's the CEO of Alleyoop, a sales development agency working with industry giants such as ZoomInfo, SalesLoft, and Adobe. Tune in to find out more about what this B2B Marketer's mission is. And off we go, Mr. Gabe Lullo. Welcome to the show, sir.
Christian, thank you so much. First off, I'm a huge fan of yours. So is my team. And we just appreciate all that you do for the industry. And I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right out the gate with the praise. Thank you, sir.
Well, you deserve it, man. You're the best. What you do. I love it. I love your show and I love being a part of that.
I appreciate that. We really had an awesome pre-interview conversation. I'm going to say talking about coming up to Toronto and Buffalo and what have you. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Gabe, because man, you know what? As much as some marketers probably don't want to hear this, I think this is an absolutely necessary conversation to have, right? This topic that we're going to talk about. And I will not keep the audience in suspense for too long. I'm just going to jump into the first question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Let's get right into it.
All right. So, Gabe, you're on a mission to provide the ultimate assist to your clients by setting them up for success. So, for this conversation, let's zero in on the following topic of how B2B marketers can fix qualification at the top. So, here comes the first question. In our previous conversation, you talked about many marketing funnels being a leaky bucket. Can you please explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think companies right now are going to market in a very hodgepodge type of way. ICP, we throw that term around a lot and, people think they know what it is or feel like they have it drilled down or feel like it's completely locked in. And then clients invite us in and we realize it's not the case. And it's not just what the ideal client profile is, which of course is quintessential to going to market. And it's really the first step to qualification, isn't it? Right. But on the other side of it, it is, is there a product market fit? Is there a pricing that needs to be aligned? What's the competitive landscape look like? So when we're having live conversations, our sellers are making 11 million cold calls a year. That's front of the line conversations, right? And we can hear, understand, and truly, debrief with what each call is sounding like. So we can then narrow in what those qualifications should be. A lot of, let's say VPs of sales come into the sales development side of the house or the marketing side of the house, and they apply sales training methodologies to top of funnel qualifications, and it really gets broken as well. So there's a lot to unpack, but I'll give you an example. BANT, for instance, but budget, authority, need, and timing. Like, is that really the right qualification at the top of the funnel, or does that really, evolve the seller and the demo and the discovery call at that moment in time? So really understanding who's in charge of that top of funnel and what their experience is also is a part of it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's there's so much to unpack here, but I have to ask, just from your experience, and I know you have a lot, it seems like it's just, there's so many moving parts in this ecosystem, and a lot of what causes the leaky funnel, I'm going to say, is a lot of the things that you just mentioned, right? It's a lack of understanding of who the actual ICP is. It's probably also, especially the bigger the organization gets, sorry to everyone out there, but the lack of ownership and accountability, the lack of an actual strategy. Like, where's this all going to go, right?
Right. No, it's interesting. Yeah, I find this to be So we're doing top of funnel activities, and
Hmm.
then we're sending leads over. The sales team takes them, and then what we find a lot, we hear this all the time, is leads aren't closing. And what's interesting is that it was never a lead problem. It was more of a, seller problem. Now, I don't mean to put blame on it, but companies come to us saying, "Hey, my sellers are saying we don't have enough leads. We don't have better leads. We don't have good leads." And they're the ones complaining about the lead. So they come to us to fix the lead problem. We fix the lead problem, but it doesn't fix the revenue problem. It's still not closing. So what is it? It's the entire channel, right? It's the entire sales journey. And we have to make sure that all of those things are working like an engine, right? All the cylinders are working at the same time in the same motion, to truly know what the problem may be. So that's really exposed a lot when we step in and start doing top of funnel activities.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that segues into the next question, which I feel you've already answered to a certain extent. But where do you feel the true bottleneck lies? And it may be dependent
Yeah.
on the company, right? Because each company maybe has a different set of challenges. And most importantly, okay, where does the bottleneck lie, and how can B2B marketing teams help address the bottleneck and not be part of the bottleneck, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an 8-step approach to
Mhm.
sales. That's what we call your sales journey, right? You
Yeah.
have obviously, list building, and then we have, of course, outreach. We have qualification. We have discovery call. We have demo. We have, closing or negotiating. We have client success. I mean, that's the basic funnel, if you will. So I should say, all of those things operating at the best of its ability, and what is broken. And it's the old, Henry Ford approach, the assembly line. There's an assembly line in building a car, and there's an assembly line in sales. And you have to know those steps, firstly. Two, you have to know if those steps are working correctly, and figure out where that bottleneck is. And then, take those blockers away, so that those cars are flowing and the production line doesn't stop, and we're, executing on the results that we need to serve our clients.
100% agree. But now I'm going to throw in another like wild card question,
I
right?
love it. Curveballs. Okay, throw me
And
a
I know you can
curveball.
handle it, right? When companies like yours come in to help organizations, right? There are times, even from my own experience, where the internal teams look at you and go, "What are those guys doing here?" Right? Like, is my job on the line? So they feel threatened, right? By by somebody coming in and providing an external perspective. So I guess the question is, how do you deal with that kind of pushback to help fix this leaky marketing funnel?
Yeah, it's very important, right? Because a lot
Mhm.
of companies come in like us and say, "You know what, we're going to come in here and try to solve the problem, or rip and replace, or threaten the job." And it's interesting. Our point of contact usually is the person who may be, being fired because of our success. Well, we don't want to approach it that way. So we set clear expectations that, hey, listen, we're not here to rip and replace. We are here to work as a parallel to what you're existing doing, so we can A/B test and share best practices and be collective in those results. A lot of companies who have existing teams in place usually put us in scenarios where we're bringing something new to market, or we're reaching out to a market that is, a new product line or a new segment, and we're bringing that in. We do, however, see about a 20 to 30% increase in existing production when an outside partner comes in, because again, we are sharing best practices. We're all working together, but there is some pressure on the line when they see another great player on the team playing ball. However, we did put a mechanism in place that really helps alleviate the fear, if you will, of that rip and replace scenario. A very unique thing to us. Only a handful of companies I know of, out of hundreds and if not thousands that do what we do this. And here's what it is. A lot of companies want to hire everything within and bring everything in house in the sales development side within, because they graduate those people into account executives, or closers, or higher level performers or managers. So that graduation of career placement is there if you do it in house. So what we say is, you know what, you can have that great feeling of growing and building your team in house with us too. So all of our reps who come work here, and all of our clients who enroll with us, know that they can hire our reps and bring them into their payroll and into their in-house team with our help. So that's a really good way of curbing the fear, because they know, hey, this person who's executing this outbound activity could be our next closer, and we can hire them to not take, well, again, to not take away from what their current teams are doing, but to add to and grow that existing team they have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know where I'm going with this, right? Because, like, far too often, especially the higher ups that are not involved in the day to day, that are looking at this from the I call it the Mount Olympus perspective, right? Looking down at the land of the living, right? Like, why are you bringing in an external partner? Isn't that your job to fix it, right? But there are benefits to your point of, like, bringing in somebody that's external, that's not privy to perhaps some of the bias, some of the certainly the organizational, like, dynamics and politics, which may be more detrimental than useful, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do punchy contracts, right? We have a
Mhm.
6-month minimum engagement,
Okay.
but so when we do that, we're saying, hey, listen, we're going to work with you for 6 months. We're going to, give it, everything we got. And if it's something you want to bring in house from our team, great. If it's, you want to continue, great. Or if you've learned a lot and you're able to, duplicate our efforts, also great too. So again, we're not going in there saying, oh, this is our world now, get out of the way. Good luck, and giving pink slips to people. It's about really, again, how can we help? How can we assist? How can we hit this number? It's not getting hit. There has to be reasons why, and let's figure those numbers out, and let's figure out the reasons why, and then we move on. So there's short contracts, and then there's very very long contracts. Zoom Info has been a client off and on for the last decade. We're doing
Wow.
a program right now where they just launched a lot of cool things, and we're helping them. So companies like that size and stature still come to outside help when necessary, when the timing is right and the fit is right.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Next question. So, why do you believe rethinking how MQLs are defined and scored is the most strategic fix that a CMO can make? And what are some of these other key pitfalls that marketers should avoid? And what should they be doing instead? I mean, let's keep the conversation constructive here, right?
So defining and scoring MQLs is by far one of the first things, if not the most important thing to start with, right? Because that is, again, the start of that assembly line. Garbage in, garbage out. And so if we're not actually understanding why those MQLs are the MQLs that we are saying they are, and what those triggering events are causing them to be considered MQLs, could truly dictate whether or not we're receiving garbage into the funnel versus excellence and extraordinary leads and MQLs into the funnel. So again, it's going back to that ICP, like we discussed earlier. It's determining, okay, are these worthy? And does it make sense to continue this lead, this MQL down the funnel? And will it produce results? Should it even be in the system at all? So knowing that up front, like I said earlier, it's like the raw material. If you have really bad raw material that you're using to build your cars, no matter how great it comes out at the other end, it's not going to be a quality vehicle. So it's the raw material that we need to make sure that's first and foremost, because it's the start of the entire process.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's for sure. Because how many times have you heard that, right? Like that the marketing team says, "Well, we've generated the MQLs, we've passed them on to the sales team now, so we're good."
Yeah,
But that's not where it stops, right? Like, so, especially if the MQLs are, like, not qualified. Right.
right. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, having sales and marketing work synergistically in that determination is paramount. So many companies, and it's the old adage, and I think it's almost a cliche now because it's been said so many times that, sales is throwing spears over the fence to marketing, and marketing's throwing another spear back to them, and they're fighting back and forth over this wall. The deal is you got to break down the wall and start having conversations. And again, sellers have to give feedback on why we're seeing this to not be the right fit. And marketers have to be curious and asking what those things may be happening on those conversations so they can go find the MQLs that is worthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that topic, what are some of these other, pitfalls that marketers should be looking out for, and what should they be doing instead?
Yeah, I think what right now is that you have to really understand your channels. A lot of marketers right now are doubling down on things that may not be producing the results that they have been expecting maybe a year from now, 2 years from now. Every company is different, every ICP is different, and every industry is different. I'll give you an example. if you're reaching out to sellers and heads of revenue, you have to have a totally different approach than if you're reaching out to VPs of technology and cybersecurity. Now that may sound basic, but if you were coming from a company and you're a head of marketing, and you're coming from a company where your ICP and your persona is all tech-based companies or all tech-based personas, and you go into a new industry or a new company and you come with that lens, it's not the right approach. Sellers like to pick up the phone. They think they're customers. They use the phone all day long. They pick up the phone all the time. Maybe that's the right channel, right? CTOs, CIOs, CSOs, they are not usually picking up the phone. Maybe their channel's significantly different. And so you have to understand what your persona is so you can do marketing activities towards that total addressable market that resonate and hit home and get their attention. And it could be just as much as where they live in regards to where do they associate with, what channel are they living on? Are they people that pick up the phone? Are they ones that live on LinkedIn? Are they ones that go to Instagram? Are they ones that go to conferences? Where is your audience? And know that first, and then go talk to them.
That's definitely a great insight. You know it, I know it. The problem is that there's so many teams out there that skip this part, right? That detailed breakdown you just gave us about the different, let's call them like the different personas, the different behaviors, the different channels. Like, why do you think a lot of teams out there skip this part? Is it because of the time crunch, the pressure to deliver immediately? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of boardrooms out there. They come out with this unique product, and then what all they do is they look at the TAM. What's the total addressable market? But that's like saying, I want to go catch a tuna fish, but let's just look at the entire ocean. Like, okay, we have to be more specific. Where do the tuna fish actually swim? Where part of do they like warm water? Do they like the coast? Are they more down towards New Zealand, or are they up towards the Massachusetts? So you have to know where your school of fish are if you want to go fishing. You can't just look at the entire ocean as the market. And I think narrowing it down to understand patterns and where people are, so you can go talk to them, is the right approach versus this spray and pray mentality that I feel marketing has been living in for many, many years. And now it's becoming more self-evident because of AI, right? Because AI can tell us a lot of these things. AI can do a lot of analysis and research, and it's giving us insights that we've never been able to really see before because of the speed and quickness of it. And so I think we are getting to a point, and I'm hopeful that we are more specific with our total addressable markets in new companies specifically that may not have the experience or the capacity like they used to. And I think it's exciting.
Oh, Gabe, you just opened the door to another question there, man. Like,
Does it start with an A?
yeah, it starts with an A. But like, since you brought it up, I've got to ask AI, right?
Yeah,
In terms of like helping to fix a leaky marketing funnel, how do you, from your experience and your perspective, how do you think AI is helpful and how is it harmful?
sure. I mean, double-edged sword, right? We
Mm.
love AI. We accept it. We know it's here. We're not scared of it. We're not running away from it. But we're also not ripping and replacing things too abruptly with the implementation of it either. For instance, I'll give you real examples. Are we telling AI to go make cold calls? Well, no, it's illegal, technically. Secondly, are we using it, though, on the flip side, to train our reps on how to effectively handle great questions and objections through an AI sparring partner? Yeah, we are. And it's amazing at it. So we actually have our reps, when they're brand new and onboarding or launching into a new campaign, we program the robot, the AI, right, to be able to have conversations in real life time with our reps, to literally spar with them. And it's like practice. It's a sparring partner before they go live onto a campaign, and it prepares them immensely before the live show, before they're active, right, on the campaign. So this is just one way we're doing it. Other ways, obviously, email messaging, obviously personalization, obviously research, pre-call research, account research, determining who's picking up the phone, when they pick up the phone, how many times does it take to call them, time zones, what's the best time to call them. I mean, it's crazy what it could do, but it's really, really helpful. But it's not a crutch. It's an assistant. And that's how we're approaching it. It's not replacing human to human communication. If it was, maybe you and I would just have our AI avatars do this podcast, right? Instead of we'll be on a beach somewhere. Maybe we'll be there in the future. I'm not predicting it, but I will say there's a huge, significant role it plays right now, but it is not a role that's, in my opinion, supposed to replace everything. It can replace a lot, but not everything.
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly requires a lot of like human intervention, right? And it's constantly learning, and it's learning quickly, which I think is to its benefit. To its detriment, and I think that's to your point as well. There's a lot of stuff out there that's AI generated that just looks off, right? Starting with videos, um, even like in I don't know if you've dabbled with Google Notebook, right? It can take all that content and turn it into an audio file, and it's scary how real it sounds.
No, it is pretty scary, and I have
Mm,
seen tools like that. I
yeah.
love there's one right now where it's actually tracking not even what someone is saying, but how they're saying it. So tonality, right,
Mhm.
is a huge piece of communication, as we know, and so it's literally listening to calls and sales calls, and not just, again, we've seen it before, like Gong and others, where it's
Yeah.
telling, hey, maybe say this, don't say that, but it's
Mhm.
also giving that score of how they're delivering that message, which in my world is huge
Yes.
because, I could read a script or I can, have an amazing performance. And that's how we approach, the way we communicate on a phone call. So that is why we're so excited because there's new tools coming out all the time that are really, really impactful for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've touched on this a little bit like in the past couple of minutes, but explain how market research and strategy help to develop a solid marketing funnel, not a leaky one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your playbook, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a built out playbook and it's your guide. And it's not just important to go to market with a playbook, but it's also go to market to scale, right? Once you get it to work, everything after that is how do we duplicate and how do we scale? So the playbook is that design, is the architecture behind your strategy. So when we do start pouring fuel on the fire and we're adding people, we're adding leads, we're adding workflows, we're adding everything outside of that, we still go back to the playbook. It's like the Constitution, right? Everything based off that. In our country, I know we're in different ones, but my point is you have a framework, right, that we go off of, and that playbook is so vital to our importance. So market research gives us a great understanding of where that playbook is built and how it's designed and how it's architected, and that's how we do it here.
And even how the playbook can be iterated, right? Because let's not forget that it's not written in stone, right?
Sure, it's evolving. Absolutely. I do want to warn people though: evolve with time, be patient.
Mhm.
Right? Marketing, sales, development, it's not a light switch.
Yeah.
I always say it's like boiling water,
Mhm.
right? So a watch pot technically does boil. It's just painful to watch.
Yeah.
But the point is that you have to give it enough time to see if that playbook is yielding results. What you don't want to do is change the play, too many times in the middle of the game because then you look confused and confused people do nothing, right? So yes, is it evolving? Does it pivot? Does it grow? Do you change things up? Of course, but also you want to do it in a tactful timeline to make sure that it is truly a working playbook or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you brought something up, and I have to ask this next question. It's we know from a marketing point of view that rolling out these initiatives and seeing the results takes time. Yeah. But I've certainly had this experience in B2B that there are people again at the top that don't have oversight into the day to day and probably also don't understand quite how the process works, that don't have that patience, right? That are telling you like hurry up and deliver. Like we want results right now. So what do you say to those, I guess, the people that are doubting that this initiative needs more time than they think it does?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at benchmarks and case studies and past results is very important. Like I said, back to the boiling of water. You can show a thermometer as well. Like you can see, is it working? Well, you can put a thermometer in a boiling pot of water and watch the temperature go up, right? And it gives you a clear indication and forecast, if you will, that you're going to achieve boiling point eventually. It's not just, again, you put the water in and then you all of a sudden measure boiling. You have to measure along the way. And that's what we want to do. So what the ways we do it specifically is if we're working on a campaign that is almost a lookalike campaign to another company, maybe it's in the same industry, same ICP, same size, same scope, we can look at that historical result and say, hey, by the way, if we do these, and these, we're going to expect boiling point at this time based on a company that's very similar to yours. Now, is it identical? No. Maybe that company has really bad sellers, like we talked about. Maybe that company doesn't really care about content and they're just missing the boat there. Maybe they have a crappy website. There's different levers that could, alter the recipe, but we can absolutely make highly educated guesses as opposed to just trying to wing it or give false expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. All right. I mean, you've given us a lot of like recommendations, a lot of actionable tips. So walk us through, and I know it varies from company to company and case by case, but walk us through the process of how you actually fix a leaky marketing funnel. Like, what are the steps? What are those key components that absolutely have to be in that process?
Yeah, you have to, inspect what you expect. You have to understand what your messaging is, and you have to A/B test it all the time. I A/B test everything, whether it's data vendors, whether it's email messaging, whether it's LinkedIn content. What you have obviously mechanisms depending on what tech you're working with, what vendors you're working with, what your historical results are, to give you grades and scores and A/B testing everything. So if you have campaigns that are running that are successful, you should be able to know how to measure that. That's what's so important. So you have to have inspection tools in place across everything you're doing on those campaigns to tell you, hey, this is broken, this is leaky, this isn't working. Or on the flip side, this is crushing right now, this is totally resonating right now, and we're loving seeing these numbers. And then pour fuel on that fire and focus on that and remove the other ones. And still A/B test because you always want to keep getting better. So A/B test everything to find the leaks and then try to fix those leaks as fast as possible.
Fantastic, fantastic. And because we're talking about marketing funnels, I mean, like I can't help myself but ask you, okay, but what about metrics? Because that's something that people want to see, right? But I'm not talking about like let's come up with this like laundry list of like metrics and you go down this deep rabbit hole. Like, what are the metrics that you would say or you would advise B2B marketers to look at to say, like, okay, we're trying to fix the leaky marketing funnel here, and these metrics will help you to indicate that there is progress?
Yeah. I mean, it's harder now than ever before to
Sure.
metric things out. And it's
Mhm.
because of tech that's kind of getting in the way. For instance, in an email campaign, there's been some rules and regulations in the last recent years that prevents us from seeing whether or not there's clicks and opens that are happening on email campaigns. I've actually removed many of those triggers completely away from our campaigns because it's preventing deliverability and it's preventing our ability to keep domains healthy. So there are a lot of moving parts right now that's happening because of these AI filtration tools. I just heard Google just release that it's going to now put disclaimers in emails saying that this
Yep.
was written by AI.
Hmm.
And so it's ever evolving. So depending on, I guess, when your listeners are hearing this, it may be completely different in a year. But I will tell you that there are definitely things that we need to metric and we need to have KPIs for. But I think the priority of what we used to measure 2, 3 years ago is significantly different than what we measure today because of those rules and regulations. So if we're talking about emails, I want to know what we're sending, who we're sending it to, who obviously is responding. What do those responses look like? Is it turning to an actual lead? Are we turning on warm leads or are we just looking at set meetings? It's interesting, right? There is only about 2 to 3% of the market ever wants to truly buy, and they're in buying mode. And I think a lot of companies are just looking for those people. And about 20% of the market is actually interested in buying, and we turn that entire segment off. It's about 10 times more people. But if we can warm and nurture them correctly and message them correctly, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where your gold is. I like to analogize everything. So
Yeah.
when you have a green apple,
Yes.
right, what do you do with the green apple? You put it on the windowsill, and then the sun on the windowsill warms it up.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean you just throw out the apple. It means you have a lot of opportunity. You just have to nurture and you be patient, and you have to know that timing is everything in business. So if you're just looking for the red apples, you're only going to get 3%.
Yeah.
If you're looking for green apples that turn into red apples, now you're getting 25%. So focus on the 25, be patient, fix those leaky buckets, of course, A/B test, and then you measure. Yeah,
Yeah. Or you get yourself an apple orchard on the sound
exactly.
of it. You mentioned one key word there, nurture, right?
Yes.
I think that's the one that I see a lot of like people in sales and even in marketing, right? They just don't take that time to nurture those leads. They close in. I keep saying they close in for the kill too fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
go back to the food analogy, the
Mm,
fruit analogy again.
sure.
I'm on a roll with that. It's
Please.
the low hanging fruit cliche, right?
Yes.
Everyone focuses on the low hanging fruit. They're not focusing on what else is part of that harvest. They're not focusing on the nurturing. They're not focused on watering. They're
Yeah.
not focusing on circling back, following up, checking in,
Yeah.
providing value in
Right.
those check-ins, not just saying, "Hey, I'm following up." No, provide value in those check-ins, right? And that's where you see excellence happen. And there's a lot of young, and I don't mean to be age, but like in tenure people that are experienced, that are in these experienced roles right now. And I feel that they're just trying to get that quick answer and that quick response. And we're in this like dopamine, like, hit like social media environment right now, not to go off topic, but I think people are not, again, they're in this microwave society and they don't understand the value of nurturing. And if you do, and you treat that part seriously, wow, it usually is a windfall at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an art, a skill, a craft, isn't it? Right? All of the
Yep.
above. Okay, my friend, we come to the point in the conversation where we're talking about actionable tips. And Gabe, you've given us plenty. All right. But just think of this kind of like a recap. If there was somebody listening to this conversation that you and I are having, and you want them to walk away with 3 to 5 things that they can take action on right now when it comes to fixing a leaky marketing funnel, what would they be?
Well, I think the best thing is you have to really decide if you have the right people in place,
Hmm.
right? And are they? And it doesn't mean that they are the ones that are going to bring it home. It doesn't mean that they don't need support and training and love. Like, do they have the commitment? Do they have good experience? And are they willing to roll up their sleeves and get a little dirty? And if you feel like you have a great team in place of people that are ready to get to work and solve some problems, I think that is literally step one. Step two is, do we have the messaging and the ICP nailed down? We really need to know that, because again, there's no point of building a campaign if you don't know who you're sending it to. And then thirdly, you really have to make sure that you're willing to A/B test. It's hard enough to build a campaign, but it's much more difficult to build 2 or 3 campaigns. Run 3 campaigns, right, as opposed to one, and score each of them to determine what's working, what's effective, and what's not. And then you pivot based on those results. So I think finding a great team is basic and fundamental. Finding a great IC or determining a great ICP is before you build the messaging, and then measure the message across multiple campaigns, and then you should be on your way.
And test, 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 and
Everything.
iterate, right? Like,
Yeah, that's everything, right?
yeah,
Yes, it's great. It could be working. It's exciting, but maybe there's a significantly more effective way of doing it, even though it's still working. And
absolutely.
let the data make those decisions for you, and drive everything based off data-driven decisions. And that's how you should be operating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Here comes the soapbox question. A
Okay.
status quo in your area of expertise that you passionately disagree with, and why?
Yeah, I think the big thing right now, and I have to just kind of talk about my space because you said in my
Sure.
industries, like there's a
Hmm.
lot of people out there soapboxing, to be exact, on things that are dead or not. And I will tell you that cold calling is dead, emailing is dead, LinkedIn is dead, or all of these things. And when you peel back the onion, you notice that those individuals who are saying that usually are trying to sell a book or something. And nothing against selling books, but it sounds like there's a personal agenda and not actual operational intelligence that is dictating what they're saying. So, to your point about testing everything, don't assume something is not going to work just because someone said it on the internet. test it, and then decide if it's going to work. And it may surprise you in a big, big way.
I truly believe that, man. I truly believe that. I mean, to your point about like email being dead, I mean, I did close one client who was a guest on this show, and it took me a year to close, but I closed it through email,
Yeah.
right? And it's to your
Yeah.
point, it's sending that person articles that were relevant to that
Yes.
person's industry and saying like, "Hey, I read this the other day. What are your thoughts on this? And here's my take. Da, 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 da. What do you think?" Right?
That is the best way to do an email, right? We do a lot of content on social media. We do a
Yeah.
lot of podcasting, posts
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, but that's all great. But where the rubber meets the road is you take that post and you send it in an email or a direct message and say, hey, listen, this made me think of our last conversation. And
Yep.
I really liked the way that this person mentioned this. Do you think, that there is the timing right here to reopen this conversation? And you feel like the problem is still existing in your world, and love to see if we can solve it for you.
Hmm.
That type of content, that type of message, that type of verbiage at the right time in a nurture campaign, like we discussed, close one business, right? That's how it
Yep.
works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Here comes the bonus question. And for those of you that are listening to the audio version, Gabe's got two guitars right behind him. So I'm just gonna go on a hunch here that he likes playing guitar, right? So the question is, if you had the opportunity to like go on a tour with your favorite guitarist slash musician, who would it be, and where would you go?
Wow, I love this question. I do play the guitar. I'm a big avid music player. I love rock as well, but all genres. I will say in real life, we just actually, my family, my wife and daughter and I
Mhm.
went to go see Oasis reunion tour,
Wow,
which was in Toronto, actually, out of all places.
that's
And
right.
so
You mentioned it. Yeah.
we went to see that. It was epic. Obviously, the brothers have been apart for many years, so a
Hmm.
lot of drama there. But
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember their original songs, so it was cool to reminisce and introduce my daughter to that music, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna go see Paul McCartney in a few weeks. He's on
Wow.
tour now, and I've never seen him. Or I'm a big fan of the Beatles, and I think that would be really exciting to tour with him, obviously. And
Hmm.
I think those are definitely both of those right there. Kind of sum up the type of music that I resonate with.
Amazing, amazing. I just remember like this is a couple of years ago. I think he's already passed away, but Compay Segundo of
Oh
the
yeah,
Buena Vista Social Club, and the guy was in his 90s, and they had a concert, and they brought him up on stage in his wheelchair, helped him get up, get out of that wheelchair, and they gave him that guitar, and off he went, man. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
legendary.
Absolutely, that's amazing, man.
That's
That's amazing.
amazing. Gabe, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your experience and expertise with the listeners. So please, quick intro to yourself and how folks out there can get in touch with you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me directly. I post twice a day, every day. We're very bullish with our content. There's a lot of free material there. We have a newsletter, so please take a look at that. And if you like what you see and hear today, reach out, and I'll definitely be responsive. And anyone who is looking or struggling with the after sales motion, sorry, after marketing motion, which
Mhm.
is that sales development function, that's where we play, and we'd love to look at what you're looking for and see how we can help.
Sounds good. Gabe, once again, thank you so much for your time. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Christian.
All right, bye for now.